So what's the difference between being an entertainer and capitalizing off of another person's misery? Can you still be a great person and at the same time get rich off of another's misfortune? Jerry Springer has passed away. Was he an entertainer or was he a culture vulture? Let's talk about it.
I love Brotha T.
How you doing? This is Terry Don Wilson, aka yo boy Brotha T, here with another one. So I like to thank you and welcome to the New Life Tree, where we like to give you little pine cones of wisdom for your motivation and mental health. I want you to remember, I don't know everything, but I do know a lot of things. Today we're going to talk about Jerry Springer. My goodness, was Jerry Springer just an entertainer? Or did Jerry Springer capitalize off of people's misfortune? It's a very interesting thing to talk about. Before we get to that part of the game, though, we're going to give you a little background on Jerry Springer. So, Jerry Springer was a lawyer, politician, and celebrity. If you didn't know, a lot of you did, that he was the mayor of Cincinnati in the 70s. This is very cool. A lot of you remember that show, WKRP in Cincinnati. Remember that? That's for the old heads out there.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
So he also ran for governor. He ended up losing that race. He became a talk show host around 1991 or so. Let me set the landscape for those who are younger, or if you're my age and you really didn't watch daytime TV like that. There were a bunch of daytime talk shows, and back then they were fairly serious, a lot of them. You had Donahue. I know you remember that. He was one of my favorites, actually, because he was one of the only talk shows that would talk about race, right? And talk about it really in depth back then, in the 90s. That was very cool. You had Geraldo Rivera. He had a show that was kind of provocative. He would touch on race too, but his was a little more edge to it, right? It wasn't as serious as Donahue at times. You had Sally Jesse Raphael. Very cool show. But those were some of the serious shows. And you had Maury Povich as well, who was serious at the time. We're going to get into it in a minute. So Jerry Springer came along at a time where TV talk shows were fairly serious. They talked about serious subjects, and they really tried to expose a certain part of the human experience that needed to be exposed to the public, right? Stuff we needed to talk about. So he started off very serious, and his shows are really, really, really serious. And it became quite apparent at some point in time where the talk show landscape started to change. It started to become a little bit more about clout, as the young people will say now, right? So it was more about trying to get the people to watch. How sensational can you get? Can you do more edgy topics? Can you do taboo type topics? How can we get people to tune in more and stay on the screen? We need these ratings. So people like Donahue, they stayed in their box. They stayed in their lane. At some point, Donahue started to die out, I believe, because of that. But you had people like, Sally Jesse, Raphael. You had people like Jerry Springer, and among others, Ricky Lake, who started to make that shift towards more of a tabloid TV type of thing, right? They tried to sensationalize a lot more things. They started doing more paternity tests. If I remember, Ricky Lake, she started kind of the paternity test thing. I don't know if she started it, but she popularized it. on her show. You know, you're the daddy, you're not the daddy. And then Maury took that to a whole different level, right? It became a situation where Maury did every show was a paternity test show. But Jerry Springer kind of went another route with it. He took people, like trashy people. I'm not calling people trash, but their behavior was trash. He'll take people that were known as, you know, trailer park trash or ghetto people, and he would give them the spotlight to the point where it became what they call trash TV. Now, this, I believe, this is my personal opinion, I believe it did a little bit of damage to the culture. However, those people chose to go on that show. They chose to act the way they acted. Now, at a certain point in time, they started to get paid actors. I guess they ran out of ghetto people, so they started paying people to act a certain way on Jerry Springer with the fights and all that. I don't know if a lot of you knew that, but they did that eventually. But they actually started off legit. Now, I want you to take a second and ask yourself, was he really, you know, just an entertainer? Did he do it just for the ratings? Did he do it just so you can watch the show? Or was he capitalizing off of people's misfortune? This is the $1 million question. No, it's the $60 million question. Why am I saying 60? Because when Jerry Springer passed away, he was purportedly worth $60 million. So those people that went on that show, no money, right? They're probably, a lot of them are broke, probably dead, in jail, all kinds of stuff. They're probably still struggling financially, a lot of them. Jerry Springer retired, you know, he got to pass away with his friends and loved ones around him, and he left behind a purported $60 million for his people. So he won at the end of the day. There's no debating that one, right? He won financially. And I want you to sit and think about that. You know, when Maury and you know, I don't want to speak it into existence, right? I don't want to talk about Maury and then all of a sudden he passes. Forbid, right? But, you know, I'm sure he's worth probably even more because his shows were a little more watchable than Jerry Springer after a while, right? In my opinion, at least. Ask yourself, you know, how far does entertainment go? You know, at what point do we say that, you know, it's not about entertainment anymore? Now we're impacting the culture. And when we're talking about this, we're not talking about people my age. I'm 44, by the way. We're talking about younger people, right? Sometimes younger people will watch things on TV, even if it's sensationalized, and they'll start taking that as the truth. They'll start living that life. This is why those shows like Love and Hip Hop and the Basketball Wives were so dangerous, because you had people in their teenage years and young adults who really thought that a lot of people should be living like that, when what they were looking at were rich people. So they would try to live that same type of lifestyle, even though they weren't in position to live that type of lifestyle, which would cause them to buy certain things they didn't need, cause them to try to be baddies when they really weren't baddies, right? You're taking average at best people and they're trying to act like they're, you know, they're tens, you know, but we'll talk about that later. Let's get back on track. Ask yourself, did you answer the question yet? Did you answer the question yet? Was Jerry Springer just an entertainer, or did he capitalize off people's misfortune? I'm going to give my opinion in just a second. So Jerry Springer's show ran from 1991 all the way until 2018. That should tell you a lot right there. No way on God's green earth can you run a show that long without people supporting it, without people watching it, right? And then he eventually got to a point where he put his friend on, Steve Wilkos, who started as security on the Jerry Springer show, and he got known for being the head of security and breaking up the fights. He went from that, the people in the crowd start chanting his name to the point where he got his own show. And I know you remember the Steve Wilkos show. Like when he got mad at somebody, he was like, you can't sit on my stage. You know, he'll take the chair away. It was the funniest thing ever to me. Because at some point, they seem like actors too. I don't have the confirmation that they were actors or real people, but he got into position to put his people on. That's the thing that makes me think that Jerry Springer, maybe he was just trying to be an entertainer. And there's more evidence to that. Another piece of evidence that no matter how trashy the show was, no matter how sensationalized it was, no matter how many bad things were on the show, at the end of the show, he would give Jerry's final thoughts, where he gave an insightful, we'll call it a monologue, where he really would break it down and make it deep. He would make some really deep points and some great points. You'll be a little more introspective after listening to it. And I thought that was great. So that was a clue that maybe Jerry was doing certain things just for the show to stay on the air and get, maybe he can make some money, but he'll slide his little, intelligence in at the end. And maybe that was a bit of a thing where he demanded he do that if they changed the way the show was. And there was another piece of evidence. He was on a show called Dish Nation. And even though he said it kind of tongue in cheek, kind of like a joke, well, I'm going to let him say it.
And I'd like to take this opportunity to frankly apologize for everything I've ever done in television. I am so sorry. I have ruined the culture, and you're all going. So take care of yourself and each other, and may you never, ever be on my show.
No.
And now I have to get on my plane.
By myself.
I'm sorry, you don't have one?
No.
Oh, loser.
Okay, so that's another piece of evidence that tells me that he didn't retire from that show with a clear conscience, right? Conscience. It kind of weighed on him a little bit, even though he said it in a joking manner. He knows that was a trashy TV show. So I want you to weigh in. I want you to go to the comment section. Let me know, was Jerry Springer just an entertainer, or what? Or did he just capitalize off people's misfortune? Was he a culture vulture? I think he was, just a little bit, right? But I don't think he was a bad guy necessarily. He just profited off of some people's misfortune. Okay, so to the Springer family, I want to send my condolences, and this was not meant to be a hit piece on your loved one. I just want to present this argument to the people. We have to make sure that we're looking at and listening to things that enrich us, that make us better people overall. Like T's Life Tree. So stay here. And also, I want you to hit the Patreon. You'll see it on the ticker below. It's patreon.com /TS Life Tree. I want you to go there because we're going to have one of the most versatile Patreons you'll ever see in your life. Is dedicated to your motivation and your mental health. So we're going to have all types of things in there. Right now, I'm in the process of putting the investment course in there, 4-module investment course that came from the other channel, T's Money Tree. So that's it for now, family. I'm going to catch you on the next one. It's going to be a hot one too, baby. Peace.